Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Wednesday, March 14th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of the Times. Joining with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of the Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling, coming to you a day earlier than we usually do due to some scheduling issues. So let's start off talking.
This is the early edition.
Right, this is the
Yes.
So let's start off talking about kind of reviewing reviewing the legislative session, which ended this past week. Certainly a contentious legislative session that started off dominated by right to work, but ended up, once that issue was resolved, there were some significant things that got done.
Right. I mean, the Little Cal levy maintenance legislation got done. It sounds like that's going to be signed Friday.
I was amazed at that it passed so easily.
Well,
Because
basically what it came down to was they were under pressure from the Corps of Engineers to get the legislation passed this year, or the Corps was threatening to pull out. Basically we're pouring all this money into your river. You ought to at least have a long-term plan of how to handle the maintenance. So can't blame them there.
No, I mean, it's work that someone's got to pay for, and
there was some compromise going on. I mean, the people who are near the river in that part of the watershed will see the benefit, because they'll pay $45 for each parcel, but then they'll also see their flood insurance benefits. Will either disappear or greatly diminish. Yeah, so that's a huge financial benefit to them, and the people in the farther away from the river will still see some work happening in their area, so then they benefit as well. And that was a big compromise.
Well, the people far away from the river, and I want to say far away, because Lake County is divided. The watershed divides right about the St. John Griffith area. If they contribute to the problem by having built so much
Right.
then
But it's a lot easier to sell them something if they gain an actual benefit.
yes.
So.
Speaking of compromises, how about the smoking ban?
Yeah, get me the
That was quite the compromise.
Ended up being about half a loaf, probably.
It was about half a loaf. You can breathe easier, but you still can't breathe easy, as it were. So bars, taverns are exempted. That was a huge issue, I think.
Yeah, the bill was all the exemptions, not all the exemptions, stayed, that the Senate inserted into the bill stayed. Things like nursing homes, assisted living facilities, those exemptions were removed, thankfully, before the bill was finally
I
passed.
found it interesting they wanted to exempt nursing homes and
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if it was in your column that pointed out, hey, you have all these oxygen tanks here, so, obviously that's a great place to have a lighted cigarette. So, well,
Although,
don't necessarily.
I still say that the compromises affected the workers. It almost seems as though casino workers and people who work in bars and taverns, it seems to me like the legislature is treating their lives worth less than those people who work in, like, say, the Times.
Well, we were non-smoking here anyway.
Yes.
But
Voluntarily.
Non-smoking.
yeah, exactly. But even so, you're
Restaurants.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
there were people that went to Indianapolis for the Super Bowl that were just really shocked to see people openly smoking in the bar.
And it is a cultural change, and I remember when I first started in the newspaper business, the first newspaper I worked at, they pointed me over to a big cloud of smoke and said, "That's the copy desk, that's where you're working," and
Oh, yeah.
And here's your gas mask.
No, when I started working, you could smoke openly in the newsroom.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you remember when we were in Hammond and I remember helping carry the smoldering wastebasket down the down the stairway,
Yes.
dumping the contents on the sidewalk, and poof, as soon as the oxygen hit it, it burst into flame. That's one of the dangers of,
Yeah.
of having smoking in the workplace.
Yeah.
Now imagine that inside your lungs,
Right.
and that's a huge problem for non-smokers. If you're a smoker, I don't care. Your lungs, you can destroy
Yeah.
them if you want, but don't take me with you.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is that it's not like a lot of other things. No, the helmet laws for motorcycles, for example. You don't want to wear a helmet. It's your head, not my head.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
But with cigarettes or cigars or whatever, you are intruding on my nose, my lungs, and
Right. So, in terms of a business-friendly atmosphere, I mean, literally, it is. The State Chamber of Commerce is saying, we're glad that's passed, but we wish it had been stronger. And this is this is an entity that generally wants the government to butt out of businesses.
I'm surprised, Indiana being such a strong insurance state,
Right.
so many insurance companies are headquartered in Indianapolis, that there wasn't more of a push to get this passed because, let's face it, I mean, insurance companies pay out
Yeah.
more for smokers than they do for non-smokers.
Well, and smokers die sooner, so you don't get the long years of premiums. I want to look at it that way.
Well, they do look at it that way. I mean, it's
yeah.
all about dollars and cents to them. They don't really see you as a person. They see you as an actuarial table. And
It's the way the business works.
Yeah.
well, it's got to. I mean, they can't look at every individual as a
Right.
person.
We talked about what did get done. What didn't get done in this session that is notable?
I think the land-based casino for Gary is a huge one. That's going to happen, I think.
Maybe next session.
Maybe next
perhaps? We'll see.
session, maybe not. We'll see. But that's probably one of the big ones. I'm trying to go through the.
We didn't see a resolution to the Griffith-Calumet Township issue.
Right.
And that's an interesting issue.
It is.
Griffith trying to withdraw from Calumet Township.
And that would mess up a whole lot of things. Look at the census numbers alone, and you can see what a problem changing the boundaries of the township.
And it
would
speaks to the larger issue of township-based government, which was, of course,
Right.
in the Kernan Shepherd study, which
So-
something that maybe rather than focusing on the tree, maybe the forest needs to be looked at in that
Exactly.
case.
Right.
You have in township government, one of the things it does is it provides the basic social net, safety net.
Poor relief.
Exactly. And this
In
is
unincorporated areas, it provides fire protection.
right, right. In Calumet Township, it provides ambulance service in that
I
area,
was including that
but at
there.
an expensive rate. And so, you think of a township that is entirely unincorporated, and it can provide that type of service much cheaper than a small island like Calumet Township.
Oh, sure.
does.
If you get out of South Lake County, for example, that's the only form of government some people have.
Yeah.
But,
So
I
I mean,
but you take a township like North Township, everything's incorporated within North Township. I mean, how many layers of government do you want, and what do they do? And that can't be done, perhaps more efficiently by another entity.
yeah, and North Township, Frank Mervan's doing a great job, I think.
Oh,
with what he's doing.
Yeah,
but,
I'd agree, but
But you gotta wonder whether the Costco theory of government that you could take it to, say, the county level in this case, and you have addressing the Griffith situation. It would be a broader tax base paying for those services, and so it spreads it out
Yeah.
more evenly. You'd reduce the cost for some, you'd raise it for others.
So I think the people of Griffith are tired of paying for services that go to this. There's only 2 incorporated areas within Calumet Township.
Right.
And it's Gary and Griffith.
And
they're-
look where the money is.
and the money's in Griffith.
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly wealthy, but it's not as poor.
Well,
And
it
that's
hasn't
why-
applied for, the distressed,
Right,
yeah.
right. And I'm talking, in terms of personal incomes and so forth. It's just, you look at the numbers and it's
Well, the housing
dramatic.
stock is
Right.
worth more. And
Exactly.
Yeah, let's move over the state line real quickly before we finish up. We've got a primary election next Tuesday in Illinois. What are you going to be watching on election night?
I think the presidential primary is going to be the one that's going to
The
get a lot of
Republican
attention.
primary will be
Exactly.
interesting.
Because Illinois is a populous state, so it has a lot of delegates.
Mhm.
And so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
And on the Democratic side, I think the Jesse Jackson Debbie Halverson race is going to be interesting.
I think that'll be the biggest non-presidential race.
We've seen Jesse Jackson get the support of Mayor Emanuel, Governor Quinn, so a lot of support lining up behind Jackson. What does Halverson need to do to counter that?
I don't know if she has to go on the attack. I mean, you know that Jackson was kind of sucked into the Rod Blagojevich scandal.
And of course,
And-
people are reminded of that on today is the last day of freedom for
Well, exactly.
Yes.
for the former governor.
And, he's admitted to being one of the people that was named as a, in the indictment, not indicted, but named as a person
Yeah.
who was interested in the seat vacated by Barack Obama, and
Right, and
although he hasn't been, he's never been charged with anything, it raises a question as to
Yeah, I mean, nobody's ever said, he put in a bid for the office, which, would have led to charges, presumably had he done that. But, there's still that nasty
but
feeling.
they have said that people on his behalf approached the governor and said, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars.
Right,
He didn't himself, but I think he's too smart to do that.
I would hope. And he's got some other negatives about him, and she previously served in Congress, but a short duration. Yeah, in fact, I ran into her in Washington when I visited.
She didn't get hurt, did she?
But I think the people that are going to be watching that race the closest are the ones in the Peatone area.
Yeah,
Because of the airport.
airport issue.
So we'll just kind of have
Yeah.
to see how that
Jackson's
shakes
very
out.
pro-airport.
Mhm.
Halverson,
Well-
not so much.
Well, and they each had a different governance idea for the airport as well.
Yeah.
So that's a bigger
Yeah.
issue too.
Well, we'll be back next week to review the results of next week's primary.
That's right. It'll be all over by then.
Sure. So, and thanks for watching this week.
Even if we film on a Wednesday.
Right, right. So we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.